Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development and another episode of Sales and Cigars. I got to tell you, I say this often. We had a great episode, and it's not hyperbole. One of the most interesting guys I've ever spoken to, Chris Beall from Connect and Sell and many other little endeavors. Um, just a great guy. We must have spoken for an hour and a half. We captured 20 minutes or so on the recording. Just a just a great guy, interesting, funny, has lived a life. Great product, Connect and Sell. If you're not using it and you're in sales, I think you're making a mistake. We talk a little bit about how you can access it. They do something called a test drive, and if you organize that well, you can get your whole team to take it for a test drive for a day. And there are companies that take this free opportunity and throw millions of dollars into their pipeline from that test drive. So they're hooked. You got to listen to the episode, but I think you really got to go take a look at the Connect and Sell, the flight school that we talk about. Another great opportunity to run reps through to really understand how to be effective, have a good time with making cold calls and having these conversations. I'm really excited that you have a chance to listen to the conversation with Chris. So thank you, and enjoy. Go grab a cigar, go grab a cocktail, because we were both drinking rye. He was drinking a High West rye, and I was drinking Whistle Pig 12-year-old, and it was just kind of fortuitous. So it's got a great story about cigars. Strap in and take a listen. Thanks. So, Chris, welcome to Sales and Cigars. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us.
Hey, Walter, thanks so much. When I found out there were cigars involved, that was good. When I found out there was whiskey involved, I was in.
Yeah, before we started, you held up a bottle. You still got that bottle handy?
The bottle's right here. This is something I was turned on to, the High West Double Rye. Comes out of Utah. And I was turned on to it by a neighbor in Port Townsend, some Utahns who have come to Washington State, where you can actually buy alcohol without the extra effort.
Mm.
And I was kind of skeptical, but I like the spicy little beast. It's I'm a big single malt drinker, but I go for this. This is the High West in a Norland glass.
So it's got a little spice to it. That's interesting. I noticed the bottle was more on the empty side than on the full side.
Is that correct? Let's take a look. Oh yeah. Well, yesterday it was different. It was fuller yesterday.
Takes you a couple of days to work through a bottle. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I respect that. So, what I'd like to do is just, I think everybody on the planet, in this country at least, knows about Connect and Sell, but I'd like you to chat a little bit about that, and then I'd like to transition towards the flight school that you've created. I think that technology is something that will. Well, let's just go have a conversation about the company and what you're doing and what you want to do.
Sure. I mean, Connect and Sell's been around for a while, 15 years. It's not something I came up with. I stumbled onto it 11 years ago. I joined the company 5 minutes after meeting Sean McLaren, the CEO founder. I just told him I'm in. He says, "What does that mean?" I said, "I'm working for you now." He says, "What if I'm not hiring?" I said, "Sean, this is America. It's a free country." It's kind of up to you what you want to do about that. I advise you pay me, because I really think that stabilizes the employer-employee relationship. Why would I join a company that I wasn't even looking at the day before? Literally, I'd not heard of Connect and Sell 24 hours before that. Well, there's a big problem in business. I've started companies for 42 years. The big problem is the bottleneck of every B2B business I've ever known is at the point where you're getting conversations with people who might have a problem that you can solve. And if you can double the flow rate of conversations, you'll increase your revenue. It shows it's the constraint of the whole business. Pretty simple.
Yeah.
So you have a single constraint, and here's a guy telling me that he can not just double, he can take the flow rate of conversations that are the thing you need to get meetings up by a factor of 10 and make it fun. And when you combine that, like, does anybody think cold calling is fun? No. But think about it. Every salesperson actually thinks cold conversations are fun, just not the calling part. It's kind of weird. If you get them into conversations, they have a different mindset. So Connect and Sell is just about being able to push a button, have a conversation with somebody on your list. It takes 3 or 4 minutes, during which time you could do this.
Absolutely.
Or you could have a cup of coffee, or you could pet your cat, or you could send that special follow-up email you've been dreaming so much about.
Smoke a cigar and have some whiskey. All while you're waiting.
All while you're waiting. So it's all about push a button, wait, bloop, goes a little tone in your ear, pops up on the screen. It's all instant, shows you who you're talking with, what you're talking with them about. And for the person you're calling, it is a perfectly normal conversation. It's normally used to call senior people. It ain't cheap. That's why. I kind of like that it ain't cheap for a whole bunch of reasons, and that it keeps the riffraff out for one thing. And, kind of simplifies the problem. Let's talk to people.
And that just getting into the conversation, I never thought about it the way you phrased it, but salespeople don't have a problem with the conversation. It's, well, some of them have a problem with it, but they don't have a problem having a conversation. It's getting to the conversation that they struggle with. And I talk to salespeople where it's like their metric is 100 calls a week, right? And when I was in New York, I would make over 400 dials a day and probably speak to 5 people, not including the ones that just hung up on me. So I have very little empathy for people who can't pick up the phone and make 100 calls on a weekly basis, let alone in a day. But that's where we are. There's sort of this mentality that there's just fearful. We can go. They bought into the idea that they can just send out cold emails and it'll work. And what I'm finding is I get CEOs on the phone because I have their cell phone number and they're picking up and they're not being bothered with all the electronic emails and texts and stuff. They're happy to go back to having a conversation. And if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. We move on. But it it's almost like refreshing. Like, you're the only sales guy that I've spoken to in the last 2 weeks. I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, I get emails. I get constant emails from people. Nobody picks up the phone. I'm like, okay, so that speaks to your riffraff idea, right? That you're dealing with the people that are serious and that want to make a difference. So, but you guys have been constantly iterating and improving your technology for the last decade. So it's only getting better, right?
Yeah, and it's a unique idea. I mean, we have humans in the loop who navigate those phone calls. They don't work for you specifically, but they're experts at working for anybody with a phone call navigation, which is, it's a painful experience for a sales rep. But if it's your job, it's actually pretty cool. What do you do? I navigate phone calls, and every once in a while, I get a little bonus for connecting one. Sounds like a slot machine. Not too bad. Ask a sales rep to do that. Ain't a slot machine. They're not interested in the little bonus. They're going after the actual opportunity to have a deal. So we're just separating the work into two jobs. One is navigating the phone system, and the other is talking to people. That's it. That's all we've really done.
But you've done it in a way that makes it efficient and effective for the sales rep that is sitting there on the phone pushing the button to say go. You can be much more effective and have many more conversations. It's hands down. It's just a great idea. So can you talk a little bit about the flight school idea, mixing the teaching them how to have the conversation, working with the words, the right messages, and then being able to listen and coach. That's another great tool that's really effective to coach somebody to get better.
Absolutely. Flight school is a funny thing. We always thought that kind of that training ecosystem out there, I mean, there's a zillion sales trainers, that they'd take care of this. But it turns out all the ones who talk about cold calling are operating from a foundation that you're not going to talk to very many people. And so, in fact, I was just watching one, it'll remain nameless, where, the nice instructor is saying, now this is your moment. This is it, because these are so rare to get to talk to somebody. Now relax. It's like, now relax. That's like crazy talk, right? You will never have another chance. Now relax. It's very important to relax.
No pressure, just have a conversation.
Exactly. So what we realized was that the the gap in the value chain, the weak link in the value chain for Connect and Sell was the conversations themselves. And they're pretty short normally, just so happens, cold conversations, follow-up conversations even, minute, 2 minutes, that kind of thing. But you got to be effective, you got to be good. And so we realized that we had a lot of input that would let us understand what good is. You do 60 million dials a year, connect 3 million sales conversations. They're recorded. We can listen to them. We can try to understand them. And we use our own tech. So we're talking to 85,000 VPs of sales a year with a group of 10 people. So you combine that and say, well, what do we know? We know what it turns out. We don't know what works and people often misinterpret this. I go, are you telling me that this doesn't work? No, I don't know what doesn't work, right? I don't know what doesn't work in the world, but I do know that there is a psychological kind of emotional journey you can take somebody on when you ambush them. And it's helpful to them and it works. You take them from their fear of you as the invisible stranger that they are afraid of because they made a mistake, their motivation to get off this call with their self image intact. And in 7 seconds, you can manufacture trust with that person 100% of the time. But you got to know how to do it. The right words and the right tone and the right voice and the right attitude, frankly, inside yourself. And we start with the words and then we teach the tone and then we say, here's what you have to believe. Right? That's kind of it. So flight school evolved. Actually, it didn't even evolve. It was an accident. We were trying to help out this company down in San Antonio that was in trouble. And their CEO asked me whether we could do something special. And I said, we never do anything special. Like we're Connect and Sell. Everything, there's no discounting. There's no nothing here. It's like we are selling gold bars and we sell them at the price of gold bars. We don't like go, hey, I'd like you a lot. Here's some free gold, right?
Right.
But this was a bunch of jobs for a bunch of people. And I kind of softened up walking around the airport talking to this guy. And I said, okay, I'll give you Monday and Friday for a month unlimited. Because I had spare capacity Monday and Friday, and we have humans in the loop. And he said, what does that mean? And I said, unlimited. Like you can put your whole company on it if you want. He's like, oh. And then we realized, we better train them. Because if they're going to have to do it all on Monday and Friday, they better be good. So we would use Friday for the training and then Monday for the calling. Now the training, why not set meetings? Why not make money? So it was a training in the form of Blitz and Coach. Well, do we want to train the whole conversation? Now, I'm an old educator by background. So I have a weird background, physics, math, education. And I knew you
At what level of education? I'm going to interrupt you because I'm curious. High school, college?
a high school physics teacher.
Okay. That's a tough room.
That's a very interesting crowd. And my peeps, my peeps for sure. So we said, well, let's break it down. And since we have a month, this is where coincidence and design sometimes come together. We had a month. Well, let's break it down into 4 Fridays. Well, what are we going to do in the first one? Let's teach and coach the first 7 seconds of the conversation, the part that builds trust. What are we going to do in the second 2 hours that we were doing? Because it was intensive coaching. Every conversation, boom, boom, boom. Well, let's coach that next part where you have something to do with curiosity and you're trying to get them to kind of be curious about what your offering is. So they might take the meeting. Well, what about the third one? No, we got this wrong. We thought the third one was what we call, landing the airplane, asking for the meeting. And then the fourth session was about handling objections. We realized that the students become objection bound, so to speak, after the first 2, because they've now heard the standard cold conversation objections. So we moved it around. So now it's takeoff, first 7 seconds, free flight, getting to where you're going, handling turbulence, all the objections, and
Hmm.
landing the airplane. And that's why we call it flight school.
I love it. And that's it's a great metaphor. Um, and you're giving them the tools that they actually need to complete that part of the sales cycle, to get the meeting, to get the interest, to get the curiosity. But are you using AI in the recordings, or is it recording and just letting them hear themselves and then coaching them on what they could have or should have done?
Coaching is live in flight school. They'll finish a conversation. The coach is listening. Our technology lets a coach bounce and listen from one to another. the math works out. If you have a flight school with 15 people in it, the coach can listen to most conversations while they're happening. And the coach is only listening to the first 7 seconds for the first day in the first time. So it's pretty efficient. Once you've heard the first 7 seconds, it's like that either needs improvement or it doesn't. If it doesn't, boom, great job. If it does, quick whisper intervention. Hey, your voice went up when you said, I know I'm an interruption. You didn't say that. You said, I know I'm an interruption. You're doomed. You're dead at that point. Next time, have your voice go down on the word interruption. Leave them alone. So it's micro coaching. Same thing you would do if you were teaching somebody the golf swing. You can show them videos all day long of somebody else or
To
themselves.
kind of feel it.
Yeah, the muscle feelings don't last that long. They fade away. And you got to get in there while that feeling is still there. So the coach is on, very nice to them. Nobody's being beaten up, but you're getting intensively coached for 2 hours in that first 7 seconds, but you're executing the whole thing. And by the way, you're making money.
Yeah,
This isn't like,
that's the aside. It's almost a throwaway, but yeah, you're making money along the way.
it's not a bad idea.
That's it's a brilliant. So it happened as a happy accident of you having a weak moment walking around an airport with a client saying, "We need this extra help," and you turn it into like another little. Can we call it a sideline business or?
It's the key to our entire business at this point, in my view. So what we have really learned is we've always known there's three things, right? There's the rep themselves, their delivery, there's the list, and then there's the message. What we didn't understand was nobody was going to take care of the message and nobody was going to take care of the tone for the rep at this level of detail, millisecond by millisecond. Nobody was going to do that. We didn't know that.
Nobody's doing that to that degree. I mean, you know, we do training and we break into pieces, but we don't get into that nuance. You know, I'm ashamed to say we don't get into that nuance of that making that call because that's it's not what we're focusing on. But the nuances is what makes the difference. It's what gets you over the edge.
It's like the difference between having a model airplane and having a real airplane, right? Model airplane, you can do anything you want with. We got the engine. We can actually fly. It's all without the engine, without connecting cell engine itself, without it. I mean, you mentioned 400 dials a day, which is awesome, right? My reps don't work very hard. They run at about 1,300, 1,400 dials a day, and they talk to 40 people, 40 decision makers, casually, every day, each. That's not that. What do? They actually push a button. It totals up to 40 times. If somebody said, push this button 40 times, you'd be done in a minute. So they do 1 minute's worth of work.
The way you describe it, it's just a dumb thing if somebody's making outbound and it's a big part of their world and they're not doing it. And it's a dumb thing if they're not involved with your flight school to help them make everything else. But all that does is just go from 10 times to your effectiveness goes up. With even if you just have that more conversations, your win rate is going to double. Even if it went up 50%, that's huge. So I have another question as it relates to your experience. You're a worldly guy. You've been around the block, and I'm just curious as to what you see the challenges are with a rep's mindset and the fear of this. I always look at it like they have a mobile phone and this annoying little app called the phone on their mobile device. You know, what do you attribute that to, that fear or the mindset of like they just don't want to pick it up and use it to make money? I mean, I come from a school that was all we had, frankly. That and going and knocking on doors and sending people postcards, but that was the most efficient way. Reverse directory, even back, because that's how old I am. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts around what that mindset issue is that needs to get cleared out and slapped out of their head?
Yeah, I do, because I got a lot of experience in helping folks actually get over that thing. We're not in the call reluctance fixing business, really. But in a way we are, because we don't think calling makes any sense. We think cold calling now is so inefficient, you probably shouldn't do it. But if you had no choice, you would do it because at least you get some conversations. But if you're talking to 5 people a day and you could be talking to 40 or 50, well, first talk to 40 or 50. I mean, that's just pretty simple. A lot of the reluctance goes away when you realize conversations are abundant instead of scarce, because it's reluctance to waste your time right now. It wasn't back 25 years ago. I used to be able to call people on the phone. One of two things would happen 25 years ago. One, I'd get the person. Two, I'd get their admin, leave a message, and they would call me back. Right?
All right. They get a little piece of paper handed to them. It'd be on their desk, and they would return the phone call.
Right. And I've been a fairly senior executive for a long, long time, because when you build your own companies, you get to be the top guy, right? And, I got a little stack of pink notes, and I was accountable to Kathy Cartwright, my admin, for calling those people back. And if I didn't call them back, and she'd say, hey, you want me to get so-and-so on the phone? And she'd go call them back, right? She was my connecting cell for
Wow.
calling them back. That's pretty typical behavior for a senior person. It's like, hey, Kathy, go through these, and whichever one answers, get them on the line. They wanted to talk to me and transfer me, right? Same thing if I was doing a little outbound. Kathy was my connecting cell. My life was pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm.
So, then voicemail came along and became ubiquitous, and caller ID came along and became ubiquitous. And suddenly people are like, we go from 6 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1, 6 to 1. We go to 20, 25, 30 to 1 conversations, one conversation for 30 dials, right? But they're not just dials. You're navigating phone systems, you're waiting, you're talking to gatekeepers, you're going to voicemail, blah, blah, blah. So the waste is factor number one. It's just kind of rational. Like, why would you do something that wasteful? And you have to focus on it while you're doing it. You can't, that IVR tree ain't going to navigate itself, right? You got to do all this crap work, which is, you think of as best case $10 an hour work, and nobody in sales thinks of themselves as a $10 an hour person, right?
No.
So you're hiring yourself to do a job that you keep thinking could be done by somebody else, but who's going to do it? Well, that's what we do. Connect and Sell magically does that. That's only one factor, though. The other factor is there's always been an issue for everybody in that as they first are learning to use the phone, even back when you had abundance of conversations. And that issue has to do with when you ambush somebody on the phone, you're invisible to them and you're a stranger. And they're afraid of you. And nobody wants to be the person that somebody's afraid of. And we don't want to be the bad thing. When we're little kids, I got a little kid in the family now. So my fiance's got a granddaughter, which I will now claim as my own as soon as we're married. I got to read the prenup, make sure that's true. And I think I at least get some kind of rights.
Good
I
access.
get to
You get
visit
some kind of visitation rights.
I can be a bad influence, probably says that right. And Chris can be bad influence, right? As he was on very, very many people over time. And so this little kid is being raised by the most perfect parents on the face of the earth that I've ever seen. And the dad is a psychologist, therapist who works with children. So he's like awesome. But you know what? That little kid is starting to hear the word no every once in a while. And she'll hear the word no over and over and over and over and over, right? Will she ever be told to be the problem? Ever? No. Nobody's ever going to tell her to be the problem. But when we call somebody and ambush them, guess what? We always act like their problem is their business problem. Their problem is us. We are the problem. And that's the strength we call. Cold conversation, our power comes from the fact that we are the problem. We can acknowledge that we are the problem. We can show this person we're competent to solve the problem. And they will listen to us as a simple trade. We offer to solve the problem. I'll go away. You have to say it right. And they'll listen because their problem is getting off this call with their self-image intact. That's it. If they were like my mom, they would simply hang up, but they would say, no, thank you, and hang up. Even my mother, who would look out into the desert and say, plenty of room out there to bury a child. Even my mother, who would simply slam the door in the face of anybody who showed up at our house, always said, no, thank you. So, that's why folks don't do it. It's just two things. One is it's wasteful and frustrating. And two is it's kind of like if you want to be a surgeon, you have to get over something. All human beings that we would like to be around, that we want to have go home to their families and go to church and be nice and all that kind of good stuff, they have an issue with the sight of blood. And they do not want to be the agency that causes blood to flow out of another person. As a surgeon, I got to do it. Going in to save your life, I got to cut on you. Now, how do I get there? Well, I start with cadavers, I work my way up. But if I can never get over fainting at the sight of blood, I don't care how skilled I am, how steady my hand is, what my knowledge of anatomy and medicine is, I cannot be a surgeon. Same thing in sales. If I can't get over the sight of blood, which is that feeling that I get when I cut into somebody, into their midbrain with 20,000 bits a second of fresh emotional information from my voice, I can't do the job. I just can't do the job. So I gotta get over the equivalent of the sight of blood, which is my reluctance to be a bad thing.
Yeah.
And we teach people to do it. The first sentence that we teach people is a funny sentence. It's a hard, flat, I know I'm an interruption. It's not nice. It's a self-indictment. We throw ourselves under the bus
Yep.
because that's what they're. Then we go to a playful, curious voice and we say, can I have 27 seconds? Tell you why I called? It's kind of funny, actually. At that point, it's like we laugh from relief. That's why jokes work. We're relieved when the punchline tells us what was really going on.
We've let the air out of the balloon so that people can feel a little bit more comfortable. That little laugh makes it okay to make, to have that next step in the conversation. But you're right, that tone does have to modulate to being more playful, or at least having that you're looking to have, some curiosity in your voice. So I love it. That's great stuff. So I'd like to land with the sales and cigars. You may or may not have a relationship with cigars, but I know somebody like you, you got to have a story or something about cigars that you can share with the audience.
I was just at my high school reunion, my 50th high school reunion the other day, and they had a very sad but inevitable poster on the wall of all these classmates of ours that had passed away, no longer with us. Now, by the way, 3 of them are actually still alive, and 1 of them showed up at the reunion with us.
They're trying to remain anonymous with the Alumni Association. That's hilarious.
And he refused to have his name taken off because he wanted a picture of himself with his name on that board.
Hilarious.
And one of the names on that board is the daughter of my scoutmaster. And when I was 14, we went on a 3-week backpacking trip in the Sierra Nevada mountains. My Boy Scout troop. We're very outdoor oriented. Troop 217. 3 weeks. So it was 3 carries. We had food brought in every week, so we only had to carry 1 week. After that, I became a very serious mountaineer and used to do 6-week trips, 1 carry.
Wow.
That stuff nasty. That's why I have 2 blown Achilles tendons. I had to be sewn back together. You want to go? That's going around the block right there when they start putting your Achilles back together. So anyway, the very first day we were in this place where there was this river, and it was like a snow melt swollen river coming down out of the Sierras. And my scoutmaster challenged us. This guy's a little crazy. He challenged anybody who wants to swim that river and can swim it back. When we get out of this place, we'll have a 6-pack of beer and a cigar. So I negotiated with him, and I said, that's BS. If I swim over there and swim back, I get it that you don't have any beer, but I know you have cigars. So I jumped in. I swam that cold river. I swam it back. I was probably 300 yards downstream by the time I managed to get back. I'm naked. I'm shivering. I come back up the trail. I meet a couple of innocent hikers.
We're no longer innocent at that time.
One of them gives me a look, and I say, don't ask any questions. It will turn out to have been worth it. And they're going, worth what? I said, I'm going to go find out. So I went up there, sat down with Mr. Skiff, and we had a cigar and talked over the experience. That was my first cigar.
Do you remember what kind of cigar it was, just out of curiosity?
I have no idea. I wouldn't have recognized it. I wouldn't have known a Norland glass back then, or,
sure,
if the difference between the Macallan 12 and whatever it is that other people drink.
Doers. So I got a dumb question. He watches you jump into an icy cold river to swim across, knowing there's a bit of a current. Nobody walked along the shore to kind of keep an eye on you to make sure that you're on your own.
This guy he'd had experience with me already. The year before, in the Sierras at a Boy Scout camp, I had fallen down a mountain, and I mean down a mountain, 800 feet, and got ripped up pretty bad. And we were out way away from folks. It took us 2.5 days to walk in. And this guy, he was such a character. I come down finally, I get rescued by the guys who are up there, and it takes a couple hours. We get down to the bottom, and my hand's all opened up, and I got a little skull fracture, and my left leg doesn't look good. And he just looks at me and goes, Beall, what'd you do to yourself this time?
The empathy just kind of rolled right off of him.
He would have made a heck of a cold caller. He's a pretty good engineer, but he would have made a heck of a cold caller.
Well, that's your teeth had to still be chattering. Did you cut the end of the cigar with your chattery teeth?
It was a warm day. I laid out in the sun. Didn't put anything on because I knew I needed all the sun I could get.
Absolutely.
Laid back, put my head on a little rock there as a pillow, and coughed and snorted and did all the things you do when you first smoke a cigar and you don't know what the hell you're doing.
So you're a teenager. Your first cigar. You're a teenager, freezing cold, just up out of an icy river, naked, laying in the sun, smoking a cigar. I don't think anybody's going to top that story ever, as a cigar story goes.
I suspect there's some better ones out there, but that's mine.
That's awesome. All right, Chris. We're going to have all your links and your websites and everything in the show notes. What's the best way to get a hold of Chris or your people to engage with Connect and Sell and improve their success rates?
Yeah, we got a little form on the website that says, free test drive. The fact is, we learned a long time ago that you just can't sell Connect and Sell to people by talking to them. You just can't, because they just go, that can't happen, right? It's like selling jet air travel to somebody who owns a mule.
Sure.
Like, you mean my mule's going to jump off the ground and flap its legs? No. You're going to get off the mule and go get in a tube with wings. Trust me, it'll be great.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Nobody likes that. Yeah. Don't worry. So we got this thing called a test drive. It's full production, full day. Folks sometimes make a lot of money. Tony Safoyan, the CEO over at SATA, Google Cloud's #1 partner, in his podcast, I think it's episode 54 of his podcast, Cloud and Clear, I asked him a question as his guest. At minute 21, anybody wants to go find this. And I asked him, didn't you guys make some money in your Connect and Sell test drive? And his VP, Billy Franz, laughs and says, Chris, we made tens of millions of dollars of pipeline that day in 3 hours. So it's an interesting experience. It's a little bit of a lottery ticket. You might do nothing other than experience a ton of conversations and wonder why your reps are saying what they're saying. Or, every once in a while, mousetrap snaps and you make a bunch of money. But it's great fun. We do about 600 of them a year. They cost nothing. And that's my recommendation. If you want to get to know what we're doing, don't read about it. Don't think about it. Don't follow me on LinkedIn, although some people think that's fun. Don't even go to my podcast, Market Dominance Guys, unless you want some esoteric stuff. But try it. Try it with your team, full production. Get in the Ferrari, take it out on the F1 track. You're allowed to spin out a few times, and it'll be quite an experience.
Love it. That's great. So we'll make sure we have that in the notes as well. So again, a lot of fun. We could do this for hours. A couple of guys can just have a conversation that goes forever, until that bottle gets empty, I would imagine. All right, Chris, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And enjoy the weather out west. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Walter. It's been absolutely grand. Made my day.
Thank you for listening to Sales and Cigars with Walter Crosby of Helix Sales Development. For more on sales and cigars, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Sales and Cigars, produced by thepodcastproshop.com.